If you're like most people, you probably don't give much thought to toilet paper, at least not until you run out. But behind every roll you grab off the shelf is a surprisingly complex story, one that starts in forests and recycling centers and ends in the most private corners of our homes. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the industrial process that turns raw materials into those soft white rolls we all rely on. Whether you're a fan of the classic 2-ply or you swear by the ultra-cushiony stuff, you're about to see just how much science, engineering, and even a bit of artistry goes into making toilet paper. Let's start with a number that might surprise you. Globally, we use over 800 million rolls of toilet paper every single day. That's enough to circle the Earth more than 40 times if you lined them up end to end. It's a mind-boggling amount, and it means that toilet paper factories are running around the clock, churning out product to keep up with demand. But how do they do it? What's actually inside a roll, and how do they get it so soft, strong, and perfectly perforated? To answer that, we have to go back to the very beginning, the raw materials. Most toilet paper starts its life as either virgin pulp, which comes from trees like pine and eucalyptus, or as recycled paper collected from offices, schools, and other businesses. The choice between virgin and recycled pulp isn't just about cost, it's also about quality, sustainability, and even the feel of the final product. Virgin pulp tends to make softer, stronger paper, but it comes at the cost of cutting down more trees. Recycled pulp is better for the environment, but it takes a lot of processing to turn old office memos and cardboard boxes into something you'd actually want to use. Factories get around this by blending the two. They'll often mix a certain percentage of virgin pulp with recycled fibers to hit that sweet spot between softness, strength, and eco-friendliness. The process starts when huge bales of raw material, sometimes weighing over a ton each, arrive at the mill. If it's recycled paper, it's first sorted to remove anything that doesn't belong: plastic, metal, staples, even the occasional pen or paperclip. This is mostly done by machines, but there's still a human element. Workers keep an eye out for anything the machines might miss. Once the paper is sorted, it's time to break it down. The bales are dumped into a massive tank called a hydropulper, which is basically a giant blender. Water is added and the whole mix is churned until the paper fibers separate and form a thick, soupy pulp. At this stage, the pulp is about 95% water and 5% fiber. It doesn't look like much, just a grayish, lumpy slurry, but this is where the transformation really begins. The next step is cleaning. The pulp is pumped through a series of screens and centrifuges to remove any leftover bits of plastic, glue, or other contaminants. If the recycled paper had a lot of ink, it goes through a process called de-inking. Chemicals are added to make the ink particles float to the surface, where they're skimmed off. This is also when the pulp might be bleached, especially if the factory is aiming for that bright white look most people expect from toilet paper. Some brands skip the bleaching for a more natural, unbleached product, but most of what you see on store shelves has been treated to get that clean, crisp appearance. At this point, the pulp is still mostly water, but it's starting to look more like paper. To give it the right texture and strength, the pulp is refined. Basically, it's squeezed and beaten to break down the fibers even further. This helps the fibers bond together when the paper is formed, making the final product both softer and more durable. Sometimes a bit of virgin pulp is added here to boost quality, especially for premium brands. Now comes the part where the magic really happens, turning pulp into paper. The pulp is diluted even further, down to about 1% fiber and 99% water, and spread onto a moving mesh screen called a wire. As the pulp moves along the wire, water drains away, leaving behind a thin mat of fibers. This mat is still very wet. Think of it as a soggy sheet of tissue, but it's starting to take shape. To get rid of more water, the sheet passes through a series of rollers that press it flat. These rollers are incredibly precise, applying just the right amount of pressure to squeeze out water without crushing the delicate fibers. The water that's removed is collected, filtered, and reused in the process, which helps keep the factory's environmental footprint in check. After pressing, the sheet still contains about 50% moisture. To dry it out completely, it's run over a huge steam-heated cylinder called a Yankee dryer. This is where the paper gets its final texture. The surface of the Yankee dryer is coated with a special adhesive, and as the paper sticks and then peels away, it develops that familiar softness and slight crinkle. The temperature inside the dryer can reach up to 150 degrees Celsius, and the whole process happens in a matter of seconds. Once the paper is dry, It's passed through a series of metal rollers in a process called calendaring. This smooths out the surface and gives the paper its final thickness and finish. The result is a continuous sheet of tissue, sometimes stretching for miles, that's ready to be turned into the rolls we all know. At this stage, the paper is wound onto massive reels called parent rolls. These can be up to 80 kilometers long and weigh several tons. It's a sight to see. Imagine a roll of toilet paper taller than a house and as long as a city block. But before these parent rolls can be cut down to size, there's one more crucial step: quality control. Factories run a battery of tests on the paper to make sure it meets strict standards for strength, softness, absorbency, and safety. Samples are pulled from each batch and put through their paces, tugged, stretched, soaked, and even sniffed to check for any off odors. Only the best batches make it through to the next stage. Once the parent rolls have passed all those quality checks, it's time for the transformation that turns them into the familiar, easy-to-handle rolls you find in your bathroom. This part of the process is called conversion, and it's where the industrial scale of the operation really becomes clear. Imagine a parent roll the size of a small car being unwound at high speed, the paper zipping through a maze of machines that slice, emboss, and wind it into the final product. The first step is rewinding. The giant parent roll is loaded onto a machine that carefully unwinds the sheet and rewinds it onto a much smaller cardboard tube, the core of the toilet paper roll. This isn't just a matter of rolling it up. The machine has to keep the tension just right so the paper doesn't tear or get too loose. Sensors and computers monitor every second, making tiny adjustments to keep things running smoothly. At this stage, the paper can be layered to create 2-ply or even 3-ply toilet paper. This is done by stacking sheets on top of each other as they're wound onto the tube. To make sure the layers stick together, a light adhesive or a process called embossing is used. Embossing is more than just a decorative touch, it's a clever bit of engineering. The paper passes between two rollers, one of which is engraved with a pattern. As the paper is pressed between them, it picks up the pattern, which not only helps the layers bond, but also adds softness and absorbency. Those little quilted designs you see on some brands, that's embossing in action. Meanwhile, in another part of the factory, the cardboard tubes are being made. Long strips of recycled cardboard are wound around a spinning mandrel and glued together to form a sturdy, hollow cylinder. These tubes are cut to the right length and automatically fed into the rewinder, where the paper is wrapped around them. It's a seamless, highly automated process, with machines doing most of the heavy lifting. Once the paper is wound onto the tubes, the result is a long, log-shaped roll, sometimes over 2 meters in length. These logs are then moved by conveyor belt to the cutting station. Here, high-speed rotary blades slice the log into individual rolls, each one precisely measured to the standard width, usually about 10 centimeters for household toilet paper. The cutting is fast and clean, with each roll separated and sent down the line for the next step. Now comes packaging. The freshly cut rolls are grouped together, 4, 8, 12 or more, depending on the package size, and wrapped in a thin layer of plastic film. This film is sealed with heat or adhesive to keep the rolls clean and protected during shipping. Some factories are experimenting with paper-based packaging to cut down on plastic waste, but for now, most toilet paper is still wrapped in plastic for hygiene and convenience. Before the packages leave the factory, there's one last round of quality checks. Workers and machines inspect the rolls for any defects, tears, uneven winding, or anything else that might affect performance. Only the best rolls make it into the final packages, which are then stacked on pallets and loaded onto trucks for delivery to stores around the world. It's easy to take all this for granted, but the scale and precision of the process are pretty remarkable. Every step, from pulping to packaging, is designed to maximize efficiency, minimize waste, and deliver a product that meets strict standards for quality and safety. And while the basic process has been around for over a century, today's factories are constantly evolving, using new technologies to reduce energy use, recycle water, and make the whole operation more sustainable. But let's zoom out for a second. Why does all this matter? Well, toilet paper is one of those things that connects us all. It's a daily essential, something we rarely think about until it's missing. Yet behind every roll is a global network of forests, recycling centers, factories, and workers, all working together to keep the supply steady. The next time you reach for a roll, you'll know just how much effort and ingenuity went into making it, and there's more to the story than just the mechanics. The way we make and use toilet paper has a real impact on the environment. That's why many companies are investing in more sustainable practices, using more recycled content, sourcing wood from responsibly managed forests, and finding ways to cut down on water and energy use. Some brands are even experimenting with bamboo and other fast-growing plants as alternatives to traditional wood pulp. So the next time you're in the paper aisle, take a closer look at the labels. You might see certifications like FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, or claims about recycled content. These aren't just marketing buzzwords, they're signs that the industry is paying attention to its footprint and trying to do better. In the end, the story of toilet paper is a story of innovation, adaptation, and a bit of everyday magic. From the forests and recycling bins to the high-tech factories and finally to your bathroom, each roll is the result of countless decisions, big and small, all aimed at making life a little more comfortable. It's a reminder that even the simplest things in our lives are often the product of incredible complexity and care.